Hello, students. A very good evening. Happy weekend to all of you. So, today we will start with a new chapter that is evolution, and we will move on to the question rounds when we come back tomorrow, and we'll solve some of the questions with respect to biotechnology and its applications. Okay, it's a moderate and very important lesson, so that's why we will keep an extra special day for that particular chapter. All right. So let's get started. So, is everything clear? Video, audio, and everything? Let me know in the comment section if you can see me, if you can hear me well. All right. So today is a very nice topic to discuss about, which is evolution. And it's a mixed reaction from the audience or the people who study this topic, who come across this topic. Reason being, some people treat that evolution as a history. And we know that many of us get not so much interested with respect to the history. On the other hand, some people treat evolution as the story of life itself on our planet. So if we look back, when we see whatever has happened till now, the wonderful biodiversity that we have, the wonderful life forms that we live among it, and if you see the differences and the similarities that we share, one question arises from in us, and the question is very, very simple. Are we special? Who created us? How did we come to existence? Was it the same throughout the span of all the life that was that has occurred from the beginning of the planet, or is there a specific story to it? So there is always one truth and one truth itself. So today we'll start our journey in understanding this truth to how life perished and it again came back uh, on and on to see what you see today, okay, in our biological world. Okay, so let's get started with our topic by defining what is evolution. So when I ask you a question, what is evolution? You take this question with a simplified answer by generalizing. For example, if I ask you what is evolution, some people will say it is change. Some people will say it is improvisation. Not both of you are wrong, both of you are correct. Evolution is a slow and progressive changes that happens in our nature for the needs of an organism to survive in the new challenging habitats or new challenging environments that it is put into. So the textual definition says that it is an orderly change, okay, from one form to another form, right? That is called as an evolution. So what is an evolutionary biology? So studying this history of life that has gone across these changes over epochs, or eras, or millennials is called as evolutionary biology. So coming to the story of evolution, we can't just begin with the story of, okay, now we have evolution. Let us start with where the life began. So life has begun, and we start the journey from there. Does it justify? Definitely no. Why? Because again, you have another question in your corner. What is Earth? How did Earth come from? Or where did Earth come from? Was it all there in the present and we were just and the life randomly started like that? So why do we have to study the origin of Earth, the origin of universe, and the origin of solar system, whatever, the cosmos? So the reason is very, very simple. The magic of life happened on this planet because of the relevance in the early Earth conditions, what we call it as. So the primitive Earth, or the when the Earth was formed, these conditions were quite unique to what we see today. So to understand the uniqueness of these conditions that existed some billions of years ago, it is necessary for us to understand what led to those conditions and why don't we have such same conditions today. So if we look at the creation itself, it is a great mystery. Yet science could answer science could theoretically explain how the existence itself was created. And that theory comes through a theory called as a Big Bang theory. Big Bang theory is a popular theory that is put forth by theoretical physicists, which explains how the origin of universe occurred. So when we say Big Bang theory, it says that all the cosmic objects in this universe, on the past universe, or whatever the matter that was present, got very much attracted towards the center due to very high gravitational force. So as the matter collapsed into the center, it turned into a huge ball of mass which was filled with unstable energy. Now, if you see this ball of mass accumulating, you cannot just imagine like, okay, Earth is becoming a part of Moon and Moon becomes a part of Mars. No, it doesn't happen like that. When the gravity is so high, the solid mass becomes almost atomic. So all these huge planets are just an atomic mass. It just becomes atoms. So all these atoms and molecules of such huge proportions, when they collapse into center, now the energy becomes so unstable. When the energy of this as it constricts, the energy becomes so much high that it cannot hold it anymore, and the matter just explodes into the space time. So with that huge explosion of you can't even proportionate, you can't even explain the amount of energy released during the Big Bang. So it is the physical terms itself fail to really give a number to that energy that is released during the Big Bang explosion. So when this Big Bang explosion happened, all the matter was scattered across this universe, and that is the formation of the universe. So I can simply tell what happened after the Big Bang. In simple terms, the space and time was created. So explaining space-time is a larger topic, so we don't concentrate on that. As the matter was thrown into the space of this vastness that is being created continuously, now something special happens. Now, once this matter was pushed into this space, I told you with that energy proportions, matter cannot be solid. It has to be atomic. As it moves away from this explosion center, the matter condenses and it solidifies, correct, right? It comes across with different matters and it forms compounds, and compounds forms different substances, and substances forms matter, and the matter becomes cosmos. So it is a process of how the creation happens. It's a beautiful story, anyways. So as it moved across this universe, the cosmos condensed and it forms into galaxies. Okay, I mean, like it's a progressive steps. Like for example, stars are formed, planets are formed, and the collection of stars forms galaxies, and then they stretch across this universe. So we live in a Milky Way, and our Earth is estimated to be formed around 4.5 billion years. Before that, it was all it was all your cosmic dust like stars. So once the Earth was formed, our primitive Earth had no atmosphere, what we see today. You might have heard in your younger classes, in your earlier days, that Earth has this beautiful blanket across it, and this beautiful blanket protects us from UV radiation. It gives a proper environment for the life to sustain by almost sending back all the harmful radiation that we receive from the sun, making our Earth an ideal temperature and climate for the survival. The rains that occur to us is because of the atmosphere. The UV radiation that is escaping out is because of the atmosphere that we have, right? So there are so many advantages of atmosphere that we have today, but in the early 4.5 billion years ago, we didn't have an atmosphere. So our Earth has no atmosphere, but it had some gases of water that is in the form of water vapor. This is CH4, and this is CO2, and this is NH3. So the methane, carbon dioxide, excuse me, okay, the methane, okay, 1 second. Yeah, the methane, the carbon dioxide, and ammonia were released from this molten mass. I told you, right? It is just all lava, molten. Your Earth was not solid. It was like lava. It was like complete lava. And it is cooling down slowly. As it cools down, the matter releases these gases like methane, carbon dioxide, and ammonia. Okay? So as the release increased, now what happens? They cover this entire Okay, surface, I can tell. I will not tell it is an atmosphere. The Earth's surface was covered by these gases. Now, you know that the sun was already there, okay, with the origin of the universe. So now what happens? The sun was young and he was radiating with energy. He's young even now, but when the formation happens, he is booming with energy. So when the sun was emitting a lot of radiations, one such radiation was UV radiation. So when the UV radiation from the sun hit the surface of the earth, there was no atmosphere to protect the earth. So the UV radiation was just coming onto the surface. When it was coming onto the surface, the water vapor molecules started breaking down and it was converted into hydrogen and oxygen molecules. When the hydrogen and oxygen molecules increased in the atmosphere, that led to the formation of, okay, and it combined with our NH3 and the CH4 and and water, okay, to form water. So finally, for the first time, we have the water molecule that is formed along with carbon dioxide. Okay. So water and carbon dioxide was formed. Now what happens? Once the cooling process takes place along with the activity of UV radiation, so that led to the formation of the ozone layer. So while water vapor, once the see what happens, you have your earth and you have this ozone layer that is forming across this earth surface. Now, a lot of radiation moves back or it just reflects back away from the surface before reaching it, right? Now, this led to the cooling process of this earth. All the water molecules that was present on this atmosphere, I can tell a primitive atmosphere of this earth, now it started condensing and it started falling onto the surface. Now, believe me, kids, it was almost around 800 degrees Celsius. So barely the water even touched the surface for several million years. It was almost touching the surface. Before it touched the surface, it would vaporize and again go up, right? Again, the condensation would happen and again it would come. So for several millions of years, so the water barely touched the surface. It took a lot of cooling process for the surface to cool down so that the water touched the surface. The moment the water touched the surface, the completely everything changed. So once the surface started cooling tremendously more compared to that of earlier levels, so once the water is falling on the surface, the cooling process become even faster. And how does this happen? It vaporizes in a very, very faster forms. Again, it falls into the rain. Again, it vaporizes. Again, it falls in the rain. And the rains happen for millions of years. So this millions of years of rainfall is unimaginable. But you can just make a sense of it. How much of rainfall can be expected? Just stand before an ocean. If you just stand before the sea and observe the vastness of the ocean, one question you have to put it in your mind is how much of water is present, at least in the amount that I'm seeing here. Whatever you see, imagine the amount of water that is there. Then put all the seven oceans together, all the water bodies that is created together. That is the amount of rainfall we experienced. So when this is the volumes of rain that fell on this planet, now it created oceans. When oceans were created, the entire surface was completely covered or was underwater. There was no lands at all. So completely, the entire landmass was underwater. So it took several millions of years, okay, for the water to retreat from the surface. During this process of when the water was completely dominating this planet, okay, something magical happens. So when we see the life on the planet is supposed to be predicted that it appeared around 4 billion years ago. The first life forms around 4 billion years ago. So now we will see what are the different theories that our once we are forming societies, we became evolved and we were trying to give reason to everything that is around us. So we were putting our own theories and trying to explain how evolution happened. We did not come to this conclusion of what we are studying directly. There is a trend of changes that has happened over centuries to what we are today. So let us see these trends of what we believed in and what we are believing today with respect to the story of evolution. So that when we talk about theories of our origin of life, So the first kind of a theory that was put forward was theory of abiogenesis, followed by theory of biogenesis, theory of panspermia, theory of creation, and theory of theory of creationism, and then we have theory of chemical evolution. So let us see these individual theories and their drawbacks and at what time they were proposed and why they were rejected. Okay. So let's start with theory of abiogenesis. Abiogenesis, A means no, bio means life, genesis means formation. So the life forms from no life. That is, it states that the life originated from the dead and lifeless things, that is, like decaying and rotting matter, such as meat, such as straw or mud. From that is where the life originated. That was the theory that was put forth. Abiogenesis was disproved. Why? Because when we had a meat, a straw, or wood or mud, when it is put and it was not exposed to the environment, there was no infection at all. Whereas when it was exposed, the maggot starts developing from there. So correct, right? See, when it is exposed, the maggot starts developing on the meat. So this is called as this is the disproval of abiogenesis. And abiogenesis state that whenever there is a dead matter, it should give rise to life, but it was disproved eventually. That led to the theory of biogenesis or spontaneous generation. This spontaneous generation theory was proposed by a famous scientist, that is Louis Pasteur or Louis Pasteur. We know him for his contribution of pasteurization of milk. Similarly, Louis Pasteur also worked on, giving a proper theory to explain how the life originated. And his theory was life originated from the pre-existing life. For the life to even come into existence, there has to be a pre-life. So that is what he said. That is why we tell spontaneous generation theory. Okay. So it is also called as biogenesis. Sorry, this is okay. This is called as biogenesis theory. What he did say? He says that life always comes from the pre-existing life. So he demonstrated, okay, an experiment. In this experiment, what he does is he takes a flask which is sterilized. That means you can put a flask in a pressure cooker and steam it up for 3 whistles or 4 whistles. Because of the higher temperature, the flask gets sterilized. So he takes a sterilized flask and he adds yeast and he starts growing them. In one of the flasks, he closes it. In one of the flasks, he opens it. So whichever the flask that was opened, now it led to the development of bacterial infection. So eventually, now what happened? The life started in the flask of where the yeast was there. Now, similarly, there was another famous experiment that he conducted was the swan neck experiment. Here, what he does is he takes his media and then he puts the yeast cells, which has grown, and then he heats it and he leaves the flask like that, and there was no bacteria growth. And then he heats the flask, and then he removes the neck of the flask, that is the swan neck, the bent neck, he removes it. Now the air passage is created. Now the bacterial infection happens. Okay. Now he applies the heat and he stills the flask. Again, the bacterial infection happens. So basically, the interaction is happening with the environment that is leading to the infection and that is leading to the presence of or infection of the bacteria over the dead yeast colonies or dead yeast matter. Okay. So that is what Louis Pasteur believed. Okay. Yeast, the death of the yeast was the result and of the bacteria growing in it. That's what Louis Pasteur tried to suggest through his experimentation. Now, the similar thing, like this, a biogenesis was proposed by Francisco Redi, and then we have Spallanzani. So these are the two more scientists who, along with the Louis Pasteur, proposed it. That is, life originates from pre-existing life. Okay. So whenever the question is asked about spontaneous generation theory, you have to remember it is Louis Pasteur. Whenever the theory of biogenesis is asked in your paper, remember Louis Pasteur. Okay. So because it's one of the significant experiments he performed to show that life comes from pre-existing life. What is the disadvantage? Even though the theory is quite convincing, why? Because when we see the rotten leaves, when we see the rotten animals, when we see the dead organisms, so we tend to believe that because of their death, the maggot forms, and from there the insects originate. From there, the amphibians, and then the reptiles. So you might imagine a theory as such to be true. But if a question is asked, what was before the formation of the, he says there has to be a pre-life for the new life to come. That is called a spontaneous generation theory. But what was the first life that was formed? So they could not explain this. So when they're talking about pre-existing life, so we are talking how did that for a life come into existence? So they were not able to answer how the first life forms on this planet was formed. So that is why this theory failed, okay, as a solid evidence for the origin of life. Now coming to the cosmic theory. So this is a favorite theory for even the modern biologists, astronomers, okay, and thinkers, even the ancients. The Greeks were smart, or one of the smartest civilizations, the Greek civilization. So the Greeks believed that the spores of life came from the outer space, that is extraterrestrial life forms. So the spores of life was carried on to a meteor or an asteroid and it struck the earth. From then, the seeds of life was planted on this planet, and from then the origin happened. Now, this particular theory is a very convincing theory that even today we are trying to look for the extraterrestrial life forms and trying to find the possibility was there a chance that we were just poured onto this planet Earth? And recent records even suggest something very convincing that the matter that we looked that could cause the start of this life was found on one of the asteroids. Now, this gets more curious. Now, we can't reject this theory, but partially accept this theory. But cosmological theory says that the seeds of life came through an extraterrestrial body or a celestial, and it struck the Earth. And that is how the seeds of life was planted on this planet. But, anyways, scientifically, to this current knowledge and to this current belief, we do not accept this cosmic theory, but we do not reject them. Also, we have been constantly searching the answers which might convincingly give us a proof to believe this theory, the cosmic theory, okay, or extraterrestrial theory, or it's also called as panspermia theory. Okay, it is also called as panspermia theory. Now, are you following me, kids? Yes? Can you respond? Put it in the chat box. If you yes, good. Who do we have here today? Okay. Yes. Veera Venkataraju. Nice, man. Good to see you people. Okay. So you're understanding, right? I hope so. If you have any doubts, please be free to ask, okay, in the chat box, and we can continue from where we start. Okay. So now, can we check our YouTube friends also? Let's see if they have any doubts or if they have anything. Okay. Okay. Does anyone have anything? So YouTube students, if you have any doubts, please put your doubts in our chat box so that we can talk about it. So the next one is theory of special creation. Many of our civilizations believe that the life on earth was created by a supreme power, that is God. Well, this is a scary situation, a spiritual situation, a religious situation, and a conscious situation. But can we reject it? Can we accept it? Let's see. Now, when we talk about theory of special creation, it says that God, okay, or a supreme power or a supernatural power created life, all matter, living and non-living, was created by this supreme power or supernatural power, which we call or refer to as God. Now, can we accept it? This theory, on further note, in several forms, for example, this theory continues to say that in some of the belief systems, that everything on this planet was created by God. Beautiful, accepted. Second point, it says it was created as it is. Now, this becomes the problem. The theory says that everything was created by God. Good. And the second thing it says that whatever you see today, okay, is as it is created. Now that's a problem. And the third point it says, however the resources are used up, however the resources are used up, you might understand this point. It never goes extinct. There is no point of extinction in God's creation. That is what the most civilizations believe. Now, I don't want to make it controversial. I don't want to make it anything more than what it is given. But if you look at our Indian civilizations, and if you look at our idea about evolution, it is far more convincing theories. And I would suggest you just take an idea about it, read about it, and gather your own knowledge about it, and spare me from me explaining you what really happened and what was our belief system and why we were called quite an advanced ancient civilization. Okay. So this is a generalized Western civilization that we're talking with respect to this particular theory, and that is why it was a huge drawback when it comes to the theory of special creation. That everything on this planet was created as it is. It did not believe in evolution. And the second thing is there is no point of extinction at all. So until the God decides, there is no extinction. So that means even though we have so many organisms being extinct because of the loss of biodiversity, conservation problems, because of the climate change, it has happened. Around 5 mass extinction events have happened on this planet Earth to today's understanding. So when you look at those things and when you compare to what they are telling, it becomes a contradictory statements, and that will make us not believe in these theories. Okay, but I would suggest you just go through what we believed as Indians. Next one is my favorite, theory of chemical evolution. Now, theory of chemical evolution is so special. Why? Because the scientists who suggested that really thought about the biology of organisms. Oprah and Haldane, I really appreciate their mindset and their intelligence in thinking about how this could have worked in their minds. Okay, I don't know. They say that the life on Earth did not start with the formation of a cell directly. It started with the chemical evolution. So chemical evolutions are, we can just point it out to certain organic molecules. We call them magic molecules. Even though you are so advanced human being, and if you look at other organisms, such as the bacteria, the yeast, or a fungi, or even a protozoan, or even your invertebrates, if you look at anybody who you feel less advanced or more advanced and compare it yourself to them, what you see is all of us are made up of the same molecular construct or chemical construct, what you call biochemistry. We have the same, lipid bilayer, phospholipid bilayer, similar, okay, same molecules. We have same amino acids that are constructing our proteins. We have same nucleotides that make up our DNA or RNA. So when we have these similarities, though these organic molecules were formed in the first. So they were so special that they created something of conscious by assembling different types of organic molecules and creating a first pro cell. We'll talk about how this pro cell even came to the existence. So this theory states that the life today we see started from the organic chemicals, which really played a very important role, or which are, which are a part of what we see today. So they say that there are some organic molecules or non-living inorganic molecules and organic molecules such as methane and ammonia, water, sugars, proteins, nucleic acids. They were formed first. The assembly of this led to a complex, self-conscious, replicating, reproducing unit called as a cell. So according to them, neither abiogenesis nor biogenesis. They say that both of them happened. First, it started with a chemical evolution where there was no life. No life was involved. Only organic and inorganic chemical evolution happened, followed by the biogenesis where the first life or the first cell started. So this is a chemical evolution or evolutionary chemistry of life. And it is way too detailed, and it is to read about it, it's very nice. Okay. So Next one, how did they prove? Hold on. Sorry. We have that. Okay. So who proved this chemical evolution, law of chemical evolution, or theory of chemical evolution? Sorry, not law, theory of chemical evolution. So the theory of chemical evolution was proved by this brilliant scientists called as Urey and Miller. They're two different individuals. So Urey and Miller, they conducted this experiment, and their real name is Harold Urey and Stanley Miller. So it is famously known as Stanley Miller's experiment, but we have to also give credit to Urey because he was also involved in this process. Before we head on to the details of this experiment, I would like you to take a moment to observe the experimental setup. Okay, so this is a basic setup. So let's go for the advanced setup. It's the same thing, but more labeling, that's all. This is very, very important, students. The reasons are several. One thing is many times they give the flask, okay, this experimental setup, and they ask you to label certain parts, which you might get confused at. Or in your CBS examination, they might ask you to write the diagrammatic representation of this particular picture, and please practice it and make sure that each and every label is, it's registered in your head. Okay, let's see what happens here. We start from here. Okay, we are boiling water. The water rises as vapors. So that is why we write it here, water vapors. And as the water vapor is going, now we don't want any of this today's earth environment to enter and disturb our, so-called flash setup. So that is why we vacuum it. We make sure that all the air that was before here is completely removed. Okay, completely removed, eliminated. Now, this is why we have a vacuum pump. Now, the water vapor just rises above, and then what will happen? It goes through the bent tubes and it reaches into this reducing an atmosphere. So this is a reducing atmosphere setup. Okay. This round flask, okay, so they have a setup in such a way that this round flask is fitted by electrodes. Okay, I'll tell you why the electrodes. And now here we also this round flask is filled with the gases, the primitive gases that we talked about, which was around 4 billion years ago. Excuse me, when the Earth was formed. Okay, example: methane, ammonia, water vapor, and hydrogen gas are filled are present within this chamber or within this flask. Remember, what are the gases that was present? It is methane, it is ammonia, it is water vapor, and it is hydrogen gas. Okay, you should remember this. I will ask you the question. Just give me 2 minutes. Okay, so now what happens? Apart from these gases, so once this atmosphere get reduced, what happens? The temperature decreases. When the temperature decreases, condensation happens. When the condensation happens, it forms a rainfall. But here the rainfall does not happen. When the condenser, as the atmosphere cools down, it turns water vapor into water molecules, and these water molecules come and collect at this tube. Okay, this is called as lower chamber. So this lower chamber actually represents the ocean, that is the resultant of the rainfall of millions of years. So when you examine the water that is present in this lower chamber, it shows some exciting results or some fascinating results. What is that? We did not use anything. We just used water and we just used primitive gases and some electric charges. And we created a reducing atmosphere. And the temperature was around 800 degrees Celsius in this experimental setup. So that is missing. 800 degrees in this experimental setup. So when you see this, the reducing atmosphere led to the formation of some of the beautiful organic molecules. So let us see what happens here. So you understood the experimental setup. Let's go to the experiment. Now we understand that this experimental setup and whatever the setup that we saw is a representation of a primitive Earth, and it is also called as a reducing atmospheric condition. So this primitive Earth had certain conditions of how it would be. It would be a very high temperature kind of a condition, around 800 degrees Celsius. There was like always volcanic storms, always these gas emissions were taking place. Always there were, you know what? I'll give you one fascinating fact. If you see the lightning or the number of lightning that occurred during this Earth, okay, during this ancient Earth, or the Earth we are talking about, around 4 billion years ago, for every minute, there were some millions of lightning bolts that were hitting onto the surface. Can you believe this? How electrically active our atmosphere was back in those days? So that was the electrical conductivity. That is why the electrodes that are given creates a high voltage spark and it comes as a pulse, okay, to have that effect. So that is what was happening. There were continuous storms. I told you, right? The rain was, it's not, you can't just call it as a rain. Calling it just a rain is a shame. It's a level 7, level 8 storms, okay? It was pouring down for millions of years. So this was happening, and it is reducing atmosphere, as I've also mentioned. So with the gases called as methane, it is ammonia, water, hydrogen gas, etc. Understood? So this was the condition. So the same thing was mimicked here in the experimental setup. So when they did the same setup, an electric discharge plays an important role, and it was in a vacuum. Okay, it contained the gases like, CH4, NH3, H2, and water vapor at 800 degrees Celsius. So these were the conditions. So what happens? At the lower chamber, when we examined, the chemical analysis showed that the formation of a very unique and special organic molecules, such as your amino acids, such as your for nitrogen bases, such as pigments, such as fats, such as sugars. They are the biochemicals that even exist today in our body. So these molecules, the formation of these molecules is a solid proof of chemical evolution. Now the story becomes even more fascinating. How how on earth that these chemicals, they're just chemicals, interacted to form a self-conscious, self-replicating, okay, and reproducing, okay, organism or a unit of cell. How is it possible? We'll talk about it. Okay. Did you understand Uri Miller's experimental setups, students? Oh, sorry. Please give me the comment. Did you understand? Sir, what if any one of them is absent? Will the life exist? What if any one of them is absent? I think you're talking about the organic molecules. Okay. See, what if any one of them is absent? Today, if we look at the biomolecules that we have, a lot of biomolecules is evolved over a period of time. Maybe the melanin pigments that are present on a skin, initially it was not the same pigments that was originated. These were the pigments that could really trap light, that's all, which eventually became chlorophyll and eventually developed into chloroplast, an organism, it was, okay, an organism of harvesting light capabilities. Correct, right? So there is always this idea of forming or utilizing resources to create what is necessary for this inevitable. I will tell. Inevitable means you can't escape this reality that the life had to form. It is formed. It has evolved. That's it. So if you see and question, was it possible? At this understanding, at this level of understanding, I would tell it is definitely possible. Correct, right? For example, if you take another organic molecule that we talk about is the nucleotide. So when we see the nucleotide, the first nitrogen base or the genetic material that was created was not DNA, it was RNA. Life somehow thought that RNA is unstable and I cannot rely on RNA molecule as a genetic material. So I want to create more stable, more structurally strong, and then I wanted it to be something else, more better than RNA, more stable, structurally stable. It should not be catalytic. It should be very consistent, and it should also promote changes. Look at how the characteristics of DNA itself is. Didn't life just evolve to manufacture a DNA molecule out of RNA? Do you agree with me? Life will create. If one of them was missing, it was possible. But that is why our sweet home, our earth, is so special, right? It always, in any permutations and combination, you have to just relate life with earth. That's it. That's a final statement I can make. Okay, did you understand? Yes? No? Is it satisfy? Does the answer satisfy you? Yes. Okay. So give me a second. Now, I hope that you have understood the prior concept. And moving along, we'll see what we have. Okay. So we studied the law of chemical evolution, and then, this is a story that we have to study in detail. We'll come back to that. So the first non-cellular life forms was formed around 3 billion years ago, and then they were all self-replicating metabolic capsules containing macromolecules like RNA, proteins, and polysaccharides. Okay, so these are the ones. These are the first cell, which is a primitive cell that was formed, the pro cell that was first formed on our Earth, and that had these capabilities, right? Replicating, metabolic, as well as it was able to, it contained all these macromolecules. Next one. So now we understood what are the theories of evolution, and the next point that we have to focus is what are the evidences? Without proof, we do not believe. Now, if I say that, oh, life was far, far away, we just spoke, life originated on this planet around 3 billion years ago. What is the proof? How are you just telling the statement? So if I tell that you are not the only organism that was existing in the planet, there were many ancient organisms in the past which are extinct now, and they do not, and we don't see them, but they existed. If I tell that, would you agree with me? Definitely not. So that is why we look at what are the evidences or what are the points that we put forth to prove that evolution has happened. So some of the evidences that we can look into is, first one is paleontological evidences. This is a famous evidence. I will tell you why. So second one is morphological and anatomical evidences. Next one is biogeographical evidences. Next one is biochemical evidences, embryological evidences, and evidences by natural selection, evidences of evolution through natural selection. So let's see one by one. Okay. So if they ask what are the possible evidences or what are the possible tools that we have to prove that evolution happened, these are the ones. What are those? One is paleontological evidences, morphological and anatomical evidences, biogeographical evidences, natural selection, biochemical evidences, and embryonic evidences. Okay. So to understand them is very easy and very nice also. Let's see. Coming to paleontological evidences, it's a famous evidence, and we are all aware of it. Why? Because of a famous movie called as Jurassic Park. Correct? No. If you not watched Jurassic Park, you should. You know the answer, right? So definitely, paleontology. When we look at a fossil, one thing that fascinates is the size of these organisms. One thing that fascinates is, okay, in Jurassic Age, these were the animals that were present. It was so huge. It was so fierce, right? So when you look at in the movie itself, you can see so many varieties of dinosaurs, right? So many varieties of organisms during Jurassic Age. It just just go awestruck because it is not imagination. It was some proof, and we take this proof and then we just create our we just try to imagine, okay, if dinosaur was supposed to fly, if the dinosaur was supposed to eat something, or if the dinosaur was so big, what would be the conditions of Earth in that time? If you look at Jurassic Park movie, what you can see is, okay, if you look at the trees that are present in Jurassic Park movie, they are all gymnosperms. There is no angiosperm that is ever shown in Jurassic Park movie. Why? Because during the Jurassic Age, there was no angiosperms evolved. Now, this is something very curious, isn't it? That's why you have to watch something very, very keenly. So if you watch Jurassic Park, they have used it so well. Now, they made the movie so well, they show only the gymnosperms. How do we know that the angiosperms did not evolve until then? We never had a fossilized evidence. We never had an evidence of a pollen, a flower, or anything, or a plant part due to that age telling that, okay, angiosperms are here. But we have a solid evidence of gymnosperms plants dating back to the Jurassic Age. So that is the evidence, that is a correlation we can build through paleontology. What is paleontology? Study of fossils is called as paleontology. So this study of fossils or the remnants of life form, so they basically give a very solid evidence to our evolution. Now, our solids form, fossils form. Fossils are formed because of a specific conditions that these animals were exposed to. So let us say that, and suddenly a volcanic eruption happens, and the lava, uh, just washes out these animals. So when a lava, which is very high temperature, okay, with a high pressure, just runs over this animal. Now what will happen? The bones of these animals get petrified because of the high temperature. All the tissues get vaporized, and then whatever the bone forms that was there, it gets compressed because of the high temperature, and it is preserved so well for millions of years without the activity of any microbes. So this is called as petrification or fossilization of these animals. Understood? So having these evidences, or having these fossils, what will happen is it will give us to trace the evolutionary history or study a particular race. For example, human evolution. Where did we originate from? How do our ancestors look like? Where did we live? What kind of lifestyle we had? It is called as a race history. Example, history of horse evolution, history of human evolution. Okay. Next one is we just get to do a proper map, or it is also called as, okay, what do you tell? Phylogeneity. You can construct a phylogeneity and build branches and connect it to this mother tree of life. Okay. Next one, we can also link between two organisms, that is the branching, how the branching happened and where did they originate from. So for example, we have Archaeopteryxy. So that is, we also can get this understanding about extinct animals and to current animals. Is there any relationship, or do they match genetically or evolutionarily with any of these organisms? Okay. For example, chicken is believed to be a descendant of a dinosaur. How do we say that? This linking. Okay. Next one. 1 second. Okay, let's finish this. Okay. Now what happens? We already discussed about it, right? Next goes with the morphological and anatomical evidences. When we talk about comparative anatomy and comparative morphology, it is so nice. Okay, if you check the heart of a fish, heart of a frog, heart of a some crocodile, and compare it to the heart of a human being, you can so well observe the trends in changes of the small morphological, small anatomical changes that led to a slow advancement of this organ system. Similarly, the development of brain is a comparative anatomy. Or if you look at the different animals from different groups, different families, okay, and different phyla, what you understand is, yeah, this looks similar to one of my organs, but it is performing a different function. Right? They look same, but they're not structurally similar. So these are some of the noticeable things that we can get when we do a comparative anatomy or morphological, examination. So this can be explained by understanding two concepts. One is what is homology and what is analogy. We call them as homologous organs and we call them as analogous organs. So what is this homology and analogy? Let's see that. So coming to our homology, if you look at four limbs of human, cat, horse, bat, dolphin, or the flippers of whale, all these four limbs are anatomically, okay, are the same or different. They are anatomically, see, they have the same structure, but they perform a different function. Correct, right? They originated from the same structure. It is a forelimb. Now, if you just compare your forelimbs to the forelimbs of the monkey species that we have, which we are very closely related, do you think that our forelimbs and their forelimbs are very similar? No, there are some differences, such as what? If you see the orangutan's forearms, they're very big because of their extensive hanging to the trees. Why did it become like that? Because that is what they want for their survival. Similarly, as we debranch, now what happens based on its necessities, these organs actually they evolve into something else. Okay, being the same anatomical structure, for example, flippers, for example, wings, for example, the horse hoofs. Okay, So next we have the cat. Look at the claws in the cat. So this is evolved for that purposes. So this is called as divergence. They started as one normal forelimb. Now you can see how they have diverged into a completely different structure and function. So this is called as divergent evolution. Divergent evolution is you start at a point and you evolve into different structure. That is, you have same structure, different function, okay, or similar function structure and different function. So that is called as homology or homologous organs. This happens even in the plants also. Okay. Now you can see the heart anatomy. Fish, amphibian, reptile, bird, mammal. Can you see the correlation between them? If you can, you compare yourself to a bird. Can you compare yourself to a frog or a fish? But look at how they're functioning. The structure is modified, okay, into different. It's just advancing as we move up the what do you tell? Move up the phyla, right? So that is called as homology or comparative anatomy homology. Okay. Next one. Examples of homology can also be seen in plants, such as you have thorns and tendrils. So we know that the thorn is something that protects the plant from prey that eats them, and tendrils or cucurbita, you can see these tendrils or the soft stem which help in climbing. So they are anatomically similar structures, but they are performing different functions. So this is the example of homology in plant. Okay. So this is about homologous organs. Next one is analogous organs. Analogous organs are quite opposite to homologous organs. They are the example of convergent evolution. You are completely different structure, but you perform the same function. One beautiful example you can just understand analogy is through potato and sweet potato. If you take sweet potato and potato, you know that sweet potato is a root modification and the normal potato is a stem modification. So we know that stem and root are anatomically completely different structure. But if you see what is the sweet potato is doing or what is our normal potato is doing, they both are doing the same function, that is the storage of food. Similarly, if you compare the wings of a bird, wings of a bat, and wings of a butterfly, all three structures are anatomically completely different, but they're performing the same function, that is flight. So this is when you are evolutionarily completely different structure, but yet you perform the same function, that is called as convergent evolution. And it is an example for, it is a, it says what are analogy or analogous organs. So these are called as morphological and anatomical evidences. Clear? So we have some of the examples like wings of insects, right? So wings of insects and wings of birds, that is one example. Eye of an octopus and eye of mammals, okay? That is also one example. How is it different? So retina is formed from the skin. Here the retina is formed from the embryonic brain. Completely different structure. Next one, flippers of penguin and dolphins. You can see the flippers, right? So they're anatomically different, but they're performing the same function. Next one, sweet potato, that is the root and the stem performing the same function. Next one, trachea of insects and the lungs of the vertebrates, even though anatomically they are different functions. You know trachea, right? The holes that are present on the insect body that does breathing. And you can see the lungs, which are so advanced, yet we perform the same function. So these are called as similarities or convergence of characteristics. This is called as convergent evolution. Okay, can we stop here? I think we are out of time. Exactly. Do you have any doubts, students? Okay. Now it is up to you. If you have anything to ask, you can ask the questions. If it's not there, then we will meet tomorrow. All right. Yeah. It's okay. I think we are all live. Yeah, I think we are live. Okay. Let's end this. Okay, students, I'll see you in, okay. So, okay, how can we predict the age of a fossil which is existed thousand years or millions years ago? So we have a process called as carbon dating. Okay, so carbon dating is a radioactive dating. So basically, what happens is you have elements, and elements have atomic mass. So as the element ages, now it starts shedding its mass, okay, and which is called as a half-life, correct, right? So as you finish a certain period of time, the atomic mass reduces. So once the atom of carbon 12 isotope, okay, for carbon 14 isotope or 12 isotope is been reduced to 8 or 7, now it would take some time for this carbon or any of the atom to lose that much amount of mass. And that time is not in days, it's in millions of years. Are you understanding? So when we date and we try to identify what is the isotopic condition of these atoms that are present in these fossils, so that will exactly accurately give us this was these many million years ago. That's how they got buried, and that's when they got buried, and that's when they got fossilized. Okay, carbon dating, one example. Clear? Yes. Others? Okay. So can we see tomorrow? So our ancestors used to have tail, and through evolution, they were gone. But why is appendix still there? Appendicitis or appendix, even though it's a reduced organ, it still have a function. We have a tailbone, but appendix we consider as vermiform and it is vestigial, but nobody talks about its immunological role. It acts as one of the lymphoid organs. Okay, you know what are lymphoid organs, right? If you don't know, we'll talk about it. So it does have a role to play with respect to your immunity. So it is responsible for maintaining the gut health of your large intestine, and it provides the site for manufacture of a certain type of a gut bacteria that will maintain the health of your large intestine. So that is why the appendix is reduced and it is not completely eliminated. Okay, whereas we lost the tail, but we still have the remnants of a tailbone. Okay, so it's like that. We will lose eventually, even the tailbone. Okay. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next class, students, tomorrow at 10 a.m. See you.